I want to make something right. We met one time before, 28 years ago at TARDIS 21, the Spirit of Light. The one where you get assigned the poster 1,500 times was the only autograph.
Oh yes, that was.
And before, I got so many autographs anyway because before the convention we were there a couple of days, and our paths crossed one time, and you walked by and I said, I just loved you as Tristan Farnan. It's my favorite show except for Dallas, and you just turned around and looked at me, Dallas, you know, I just want to let you know I'm going to set things right. You couldn't pay me to watch Dallas anymore. But I've watched those, All Creatures Great and Smalls, I've read the books, it's one of my favorite shows of all time. And you might have been a great doctor, and maybe one of the best, but you're the best Tristan that ever played.
More about that. Peter was so popular as Tristan or Creatures Great and Small, and imagine how happy I was when I was told that Peter was going to be the new Doctor. Just imagine.
We're imagining it.
Really happy.
Well, how early on did you know that was going to happen when you first joined?
I don't think I knew that far in advance, actually. I can't remember.
I mean, when you came aboard for Keeper,
yes.
I imagine everyone knew that Tom was leaving at that point.
Yes.
And then were you just...
Well, Nissa's character wasn't meant to stay on. She was only taken on initially for the Keeper of Tronken, and I'm not sure where in the scheme of things they decided that Nissa should stay, because I imagine it would have upset future scripts and stuff. But yeah, it was a funny time because Tom was leaving, and it was a little bit stressful in the studio.
And then you get the news that, the new man who's taking over is Peter Davison. There was joy in your heart, as I say, right?
There was joy in my heart. Well, there weren't very many people, females, that didn't think that Peter was just the thing at the time.
Those are the days.
I imagine there still are, isn't that true?
Yeah,
Is that I just thought it'd be funny to have a line in there about how we used to like the TARDIS. We're really being bitter. It's about us going into the TARDIS and being bitter about the fact that theirs is much better than ours was. But we don't, of course, say that. We say the opposite. So we say, what's all this stupid atmospheric lighting that makes everything look good? Get rid of it. Let's brightly lit everything so I can see what I'm doing. Why don't the set wobble? I used to love the wobble. So it's been too busy. The brilliant thing about the TARDIS set now is that it's a standing set, so they can actually dress it properly, and it never gets taken down. It's actually down in Cardiff, and it's a big sort of pod. It's permanently there. You can walk inside it and just walk around it. And it's on different levels as well, of course, which is why we put in the line about too many stairs. It's a mess. So everything we're actually talking about is what is better about it, but we're trying to pretend it's worse.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Did you like the celery?
I like wearing celery on my lapel. I don't like eating it. I did in fact, there's one, I think it was Castrovalva, where there's a scene where I walk in and I see this big spread of food, and I go, celery. And I pick it up, and I think I take a bite of it. It's either that or it's enlightenment, I'm not sure. But I take a bite of it, and appear to like it. But what you don't see is, after the cut, me going, I can't bear celery. It's a good job it's an antidote of some description, because it's not good for anything else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Celery thing. Is there a story behind that, or were they just like, we're going to slap a piece of celery on the Fifth Doctor?
Well, we had the costume, which we've covered, and then John said to me, I think you should wear something odd, sort of something slightly eccentric. So I said, okay, great, find something. So he came back to me a couple of days later and said, I decided you should be wearing a stick of celery. And I said, okay, why? And he said, I have no idea. I just thought it'd be a good idea. And I said, well, as long as you explain it before I leave, that's fine. So he said, okay, that's a deal. So 3 years go by, and we get to Caves of Androzani, and I read the script, and I hadn't really been thinking about this. It suddenly occurs to me, he's never explained the celery. And so I point this out to him, and he said, don't worry. So he gave it to Eric Saywood, who was a script editor. And Eric came up with, I think it wasn't a bad explanation. And it is, of course, I'm sure you all know, that the Doctor is allergic to certain gases in the practice range, and if these gases are present, the celery turns purple, and then he can eat the celery, and he is saved. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to do that, so I turned into Colin Baker.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have some bad news about Tremas. But seriously, a very big fan, obviously, and thank you so much for all that you've done. Speaking with Janet Fielding a while back, she painted you, Peter, as a bit of a prankster on set. I was wondering if the two of you could treat us to an anecdote along those lines, especially if it had to do with Anthony Ainley.
He's asking about you have a reputation for being a bit of a prankster.
I don't know where Janet's got that from.
I did dress up as Janet once. Do you remember that? I went out and
No, I wasn't involved in any of that.
You were definitely there. She had that big multicoloured thing, and I put on, I don't know, I put on a dress or something. Went out just for a laugh. I remember.
Are you
It was when
sure?
Naomi Don was the makeup.
Oh, I don't remember.
Yeah, what was the last? Sorry, I'm just speaking here.
But he wants you to regale the crowd with the tales of some of your antics.
The antics, right. Well, apart from dressing up as Janet Fielding, I mean, I wonder if is he referring to the famous Janet Fielding anecdote about the... right. I will tell the story, although I can't believe there's anyone in the galaxy who hasn't heard it.
Anything about Anthony Ainley?
Think about Anthony Ainley.
And any antics
I
involved?
don't think there was any pranks to do with Anthony Ainley. Was there really? I mean, he was very funny to work with. He did make me laugh. Because he was a big wuss. Big coward. He was the biggest coward who'd ever lived. And then he played this brilliant evil villain who was unscrupulous and evil, and yet he was just a big coward. But it's not a prank, I'm afraid. I mean, there was one moment when special effects tried to kill us. The thing about special effects in the BBC is if they say that we've got this little detonation here, and it's just going to be a puff of smoke. Just to be a little puff of smoke, that's all, don't worry. You know it's going to be an enormous explosion. And if they say, this is going to be a really big explosion, you know it's going to go... That's what it will be. And so I think the Cybermen were firing at us in the Five Doctors, and there was meant to be this little shot, little detonation, and it was rather a loud bang. So I just turned away from momentarily. I looked back, and Anthony had disappeared. He'd hidden behind a rock. And he wouldn't come out. Well, I think it was just, yeah. And the famous Janet story, which is not a prank at all, but Janet, as we've covered, when she came back in the second series, you know, they'd lost most of their clothes, and Janet was wearing this boob tube. And she would whinge constantly about the boob tube, wouldn't she? Would she complain that, oh, it's so uncomfortable, it keeps slipping down, it's really awful. So we were walking back from lunch one day around the BBC television centre along the corridor, and she was whinging about this boob tube. Oh, it's so uncomfortable, why do they design these terrible things? And I just stopped, and I turned around and I said, Janet, will you do me a favour? I said, would you reach as far above your head as possible? Now, I ask any ladies in the audience, if you happen to be wearing a boob tube and a chap comes up to you and says, would you just reach as far above your head as possible, would you do it? No. Well, Janet did. And of course, the inevitable happened. Just as the camera crew was walking in the other direction along, we're back from lunch, so I just ran. And she's never forgiven me. She thinks it was a prank, but I just didn't think she'd do it.
Thank you, sir.
Caves of Vandazani, greatest first generation story ever, possibly greatest Doctor Who story ever. One of the things that story is when I became a huge fan of yours, because you played, in my opinion, you played the Doctor exactly right, exactly the way I would have wanted you to play the Doctor all along, very brooding and moody, and it was absolutely perfect. I guess what my question is that how much input did you have into the character? You know, like the way that you were being the doctor?
You don't have any actual. What happens when you start off Doctor Who? And it's never satisfactory. This, and Castrovalva obviously was sort of written for me, but for the first 2 or 3 stories, you're doing stories that were intended for Tom. So there's a kind of lag. You know, they don't sit down when Tom finishes and go, now we're going to write for Peter. But what hopefully happens is after a while, when they see the way you're going, they then start writing for you. But I didn't have a meeting where I said, okay, this is what I want you to do, guys. And the chances of that would be impossible. So, as I said earlier, you're sort of left to your own devices, really. And I had certain ideas. I don't think they were brilliant ideas. I just wanted to make it more vulnerable and a bit more.
But we recorded slightly out of sequence, didn't we? Was that because of that, or?
Well, it was this idea, and I'm not sure it's the right idea. Is that you do? I mean, we did 40 Doomsday first, and then Visitation, and then we went back and did Castrovalva. It's the idea that this is the first time that people see you. You've already done two shows. But I'm not sure how that. I'm not convinced about that. I'm not. I used to be convinced by it, but I'm not convinced by it now. In a way, it's better to see you find your way.
Well, exactly.
You did the same with Matt Smith as well.
Yes.
Where he went back.
Yes.
And you don't feel that you're more comfortable at that point when the audience first sees you, you're settled into the part of it?
Well, but part of the thing about when you first start up as a doctor, which is now a recurring theme, is that you aren't even sure who you are. So in fact,
that would have been better then if you
to develop that actually in order might actually be better. So what you tend to be doing is you find your way through 40 Doomsday and then Visitation, and then you have to almost recreate the uncertainty for Castrovalva rather than actually use that uncertainty as part of developing the character, which I think might
have become natural inside of you.
But to answer the question, no, I didn't really have. I just had to come up with my own ideas, and if there's anything that John didn't like, then he would obviously veto.
I learned in later years that you said that you might have been willing to stay on for a 4th season before they got Colin. And so it was like on that last story, it almost hit me that it was like, because you were just kind of like doing this because this was your last story and you were just going, it almost like you were like seriously doing it your way, you know, like to hell with everything else. Like, I'm just going to do it my way and, you know, whatever.
I mean,
that's so cool.
Well, the thing about Caves van der Zani is, and this was none of my doing, is that we had a great script. We had a Bob Hope script, and we had a very different kind of director in Graham Harper. And so everything came together. Now, whether that was John's idea was because it was my last story, he was going to really get a good script, then I'd have to ask him, why weren't you doing that before? You know, it was great. And probably if I'd had to make a decision whether to do another year after Caves van der Zani, I would have done another year. Unfortunately, I turned into college.
Right.
So I couldn't do that. But I had to make a decision actually after the rather unsatisfactory, in my head, strike hit year. And I was finding it a bit frustrating. And I'd already said in my head, kill years and then move on. I just think it was a combination of circumstances. Maybe I was really, because I was outgoing and confident in that last story, but it was because of the great cast, the great director, and the great script.
Yeah.
And you had worked with Graham Harper prior to that, but this was his directorial debut.
Yes, with me as David.
Was there an enthusiasm having him sort of take that?
No, well, I mean, I wasn't not unenthusiastic, but I did think on several occasions, of course, of filming Case Man designing, this man is nuts. Because he would do things. There was a way of people filmed in studio television in those days, which was very static. You know, there's all those scenes where we just seemed to come on and stand in a big row and say lines to each other, and then we'd have this ridiculous thing of I kept asking why this had to be the case. So someone would then go, "Look, Doctor," and then they'd cut to a door, and then it would open. And I would say, well, surely, if she's going, "Look, Doctor," the door must already be open, or must be open. No, this works. It didn't work. It was just the way that they did those things. And we'd literally go, we'd stand in a big row and go, right, this is a real emergency. We've only got 25 seconds before the world explodes. And then we'd all be standing there, wouldn't do anything. And of course, Graham Harper came on, and he was on the floor, and he would move the camera around, and I remember saying, I don't think this shot will work, will it? And he'd go, no, it will work, and of course it did work. But we were just so used to doing these things in a certain way.
When we all watched Caves Around Designing, the BFI, we all went as a celebration for the 50-year thing. I was just shocked at how different it looked. It just looked like a completely different program. It was because when we were on it, there's a group of us around the console. We were all positioned so that we were all in. The camera could see us all. It was like posing from a family photograph.
And it wasn't peculiar. It wasn't peculiar to Doctor Who. To make it clear, this was just the way in Britain that the studio-bound television was made. The director was upstairs in a gallery, just sending messages down to the first, who would then move the camera around. Okay, just move that camera around to there. Okay, stay still. Tell them to stand still until the end of the scene, then they can rush off then. So it was just a very static way of doing it. And while it was happening, you weren't really that aware of it, because that's just the way things were done.
Talking about directors being up in the thing, who was the floor manager we had on 4 to Doomsday?
Oh, Henry.
Stratford Johns was playing a big frog. And the note came down from the director to the SM, could you just tell Stratford Johns just bring it down a bit? And he walked up to Stratford Johns and says, way over the top.
The idea is that the first is there to translate the irate director. So the director up in the gallery might be going, he's terrible, tell him to do it completely differently. And they're going, then the first have to go up to the actor and say, could you just maybe just be doing it slightly differently? So he's meant to be the diplomat. Yeah. Well, with Henry, the reverse was true. Because Sarah said that, I think they said, I was actually I was in the gallery when they sent their message down, and they said, just bring it down very slightly. And so Henry went out to them, they think you're way over the top. not the thing to do, it's just...
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Oh.